stop expecting people to be active just because we enjoy it. And I think it's taken for granted the perception, the positive perception we think people have of it from the outside, and what people get from it at first when they're doing it. Because the way I sort of looked at it was like, I've got friends who love spending their weekend on having a night out and social. I don't enjoy that. I don't do it because they tell me how great it is.
Yeah.
So if I tell them how great going to the gym at 6 a.m. is, why do I expect to get a different response?
Hi, and welcome to the Active Code podcast, brought to you by Aspire Active Partnerships. I'm Paul Griffiths, and joining me each week on the pod is Luke Johnson.
Aspire Active Partnerships is a community of like-minded business leaders who all believe that collaboration in the sports coaching and children's activity sector is essential for success. We've proven that working in collaboration does benefit business growth and essentially helps more children be more active more often.
To combat physical inactivity, we need organisations that are performing at their very best. Organisations will only operate to high standards if they are led well. So, if we can focus on developing high quality leaders throughout an organisation, not just at the top, customers will experience higher quality services, which means heightened enjoyment levels and increased levels of physical activity. And if we do this at an early age, we know that we can build the foundations for a more active, happier and healthier life. The Active Code investigates what it really takes to be a successful leader and how organisations can combat physical inactivity.
We won't be alone through this journey. We are joined by business owners and experts from our sector, as well as inspirational people from outside our industry. We'll understand the importance of physical activity to our guests, reflect on leadership experiences, and gain thought-provoking insights on how we can crack the Active Code and get more children more active more often. If you like what you hear, please leave us a rating and subscribe wherever you get your pods. Rafe Turner, Partnership Executive at CIMSPA, joins us for this episode. Rafe and the team at CIMSPA are driven to enhance society to make a positive difference for individuals, groups and communities. Rafe's role within CIMSPA has been instrumental in supporting thousands of coaches receive training, guidance and support to succeed in a sector that has previously struggled to keep its best people. During the episode, Rafe shares top tips and vulnerabilities on work-life balance, traits of a great leader, supporting team development pathways, the struggles during his career so far, and how CIMSPA are putting the workforce and sector on the map. Enjoy the pod. Rafe, welcome to the Active Code podcast.
Thanks very much for having me.
Could you start by telling our listeners a little bit more about your professional journey so far?
Yeah, sure. When I had to think back to prep this, it used to only be, thinking back like maybe one or two jobs, but I realise now it's been just over half my life now. I always think to start it. It was year 9 at school when you do work experience, and I was like, I just want to do something to do with football. Like that was it. I played football, but I wanted to do something to do with football, being closer to it. And people sort of said, well, I said we've got a couple of local clubs, and they were like, don't go to your local clubs. They'll just have you sweeping out the changing rooms. They'll have you doing all the boring tasks. And someone suggested, why don't you contact your county FA? And I didn't know there was such a thing as a county FA, a county football association. So I got in touch with them, and they said, yeah, go for it. You can come in. Sounds like they had a couple of people who did it. So I went in and did a week's work experience with Worcestershire FA, and it just massively opened my eyes to all the ways you could be involved in football and then sport beyond playing. So yeah, from there, really enjoyed it. And I met someone there was a coach at the county FA who ran his own business, holiday camps. So I started to do some volunteer coaching in the school holidays. And that over time, and when I got old enough to do qualifications, progressed to paid coaching, and then continuing to volunteer more in a sort of sport development role. And then sort of over time from that, did an apprenticeship, realised actually I probably enjoyed the sport development more than the coaching. I didn't necessarily want to be outside in those rainy evenings when the kids were loving it, but I wasn't so much. So got into sport development again through kind of the county FA and some young leader programs that are available through football, and have done sport development work on a local, a regional, a national level in different jobs, and now working for CIMPSA, who are the Chartered Institute for the Management of Sport and Physical Activity, more around building partnerships and relationships with employers in sport and physical activity. But throughout that, I'm still volunteering. So I sort of volunteer more now in terms of supporting with learning and development events and youth leadership opportunities for young people, volunteering in football. So yeah, that's I suppose it sort of up to now.
Brilliant. Would you recommend an apprenticeship route to people? Because there's a lot about at the moment, and some get bad raps, but then you hear really good stories about some others as well.
Yeah, I definitely would, in terms of the opportunities it gave me. And I think, although I think now the apprenticeship offer now is probably far more advanced than it was when I did it. It was the apprenticeship provider were a kind of totally remote organisation who someone just came in a couple of times a year and checked in on me. But for me, it was an opportunity to do enough work to pay my bills, doing something I'm enjoying. Yeah. And it was the only way that business could justify employing me at that stage, because the business was growing. So it worked so well for both of us. But the guy who ran the business, a guy called Ted, who is kind of really helped me get started. He didn't go to uni, and before I met him and saw what he did, I just assumed, whether I liked it or not, and by that point I didn't want to go to uni, that I would have to go there. I would have to do some sort of sport degree to be able to find a job. And it was great to see that actually there was something for someone who just wanted to get stuck into it straight away and probably just leave the classroom for a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And CIMSPA then, so you gave a quick intro of kind of their title, I guess, but for listeners, give us a brief overview of what CIMSPA actually do, or how people might see CIMSPA in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, sure. So CIMSPA being a chartered institute essentially means that there's only one of them for each sector. CIMSPA are a lot newer than most chartered institutes, so people have always heard of your chartered accountants, your chartered surveyors. Our role is essentially to provide guidance, support, and a level of regulation to the workforce within their sector. So we do that through providing professional standards. So those are the knowledge, the skills, the behaviours that you need to be safe, competent, at very much an entry level for the different roles that exist in the sector. And those then get used to regulate and accredit and recognise training, qualifications, CPD, some of the stuff that Aspire do on the training side. But we also use them as a bit of a framework to support employers with developing their people offer, whether that's I'm about to employ someone for the first time, I need a bit of guidance in terms of making sure my processes are in place, through to, we've got a team and that's great, but we don't really have much of a strategy for how we develop them, or we haven't really got very many processes behind making sure that they have a good experience and that they're really contributing to the business. So yeah, all things people. We are a professional development body for sport and physical activity workforce.
Perfect. And on physical activity, you mentioned football in your early days.
Yeah.
What does physical activity mean to you?
It's so ingrained in me now. So I know that I take it for granted at times and its benefits. I'm also very privileged to not have any particular barriers in place to stopping me being active that other people might do in terms of their home or their work lives. So I know that it's fundamental for me to be operating at a high level and to be trying to be the person I want to be. Exercise, being healthy, the discipline it kind of gives me in my life is really, really important, in that it has a real knock-on effect to everything I do, outside of sport. Yeah.
I'm missing the discipline. Whenever I meet with you, you always have water. I'm always on teas and coffees. So how do you keep active at the moment?
So football was the first love, but it's definitely behind me now. I was in the office actually yesterday, and we were one of the guys had brought in a couple of golf clubs, and they were just knocking some plastic little golf balls into the bin. And I was like, I can't play golf, so I didn't try, but I was just kicking them back to them, and I was thinking, I would love to have a little kick around again. But yeah, now for me, it's the gym, which is very much around weightlifting side of things for me. I need to probably get back on the cardio a little bit, but then also just walking, and almost probably like getting into a little bit of hiking, because that's the outdoors. The outdoors bit for me is just being surrounded by nature. You know, if I'm with friends, great, but I'm quite happy doing it on my own, and that's real like me time. Yeah.
Brilliant. And you mentioned that it impacts you on kind of your whole life, being active, doing exercise. What would you say the impact is on your work life? So by you keeping active, mentally, physically, your well-being, how does that help your work?
Yeah, I think there are real similarities, and there's a lot that's transferable between the discipline of sticking to a form of exercise, and then the discipline in terms of managing your time, and trying to really be as productive and as effective as possible with your time. Because in the gym, if you're in there for 4 hours when you can do it in one, that's not particularly productive, and you could apply the same sort of thing to work in terms of trying to kind of work smart and not always harder. I also know that if I've been away for a couple of days with work and haven't been able to get in the gym, I'm probably getting having to kind of getting a little bit more impatient sometimes at little things. So I know it definitely helps from kind of just looking after your emotions really as well.
No, absolutely.
And what about yourself, sorry? I've never what are your main things?
We've never been asked. In terms of, I guess, exercise for me, it starts the day off right. So I exercise in the morning predominantly. That's definitely what I need to, because when I get home after work, put the kids to bed, I'm not going out again. I'm relaxing or sleeping. So yeah, for me it's like morning, usually a HIIT workout or run around the block, that kind of thing, and it sets me off to eat better as well. Throughout the day, like if I exercise, I'll eat well. If I haven't, I'm more likely to pop to the shop to get a donut, or so is it literally like that black and white sometimes? But I agree with you in terms of productivity, definitely discipline, but my energy levels as well. Like whenever exercise in the morning, I'm absolutely I can go to bed a lot later. Where if I haven't, I'm a bit more sluggish. You're kind of dragging yourself through the day, and then I'll be in bed by like 8 p.m.
You think exercising first in the day would take it out of you, but it, like you say, it does give you a little bit of a boost.
Absolutely.
I've been going to the gym first thing for the last few months, which I'd never normally done. I thought was going to be a real adjustment. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to stick with it, and it's definitely really worked for me.
No, absolutely. You get the endorphins, don't you? And you're just feeling really good from the start of the day. So at Aspire, we're really passionate, and the partners in our network really passionate about getting more people active, especially children and young people.
Yeah.
So what does CIMSPA do to help contribute to getting more people more active?
Yeah. So CIMSPA don't deliver any form of exercise. That's not the thing. We're not a kind of a provider or an operator in that way, and we don't necessarily provide the training that the workforce take to either get a job in the first place or then get more upskilled and learn to specialise. But we work behind that. We're kind of the system behind that. So we are there to I suppose our vision is around a recognised, respected, valued sector that everyone can be part of. And if a workforce feel like they're part of that, we think that has a knock-on positive effect on the exercise, the sport opportunities they're providing, which means more and better, sport, exercise for children and for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to helping train the employers or support the employers who employ the staff, who then will go, all the team members then go into and deliver in the community or the schools or wherever they are.
Yeah. And the self-employed and the freelance, because on the fitness side of things, more rather than the sport, that's it's almost dominated by sole traders, self-employed. So very much a little bit around supporting them in their business, but also just really guiding them around best practice and giving them a little bit of a community as well. Because I know within the Aspire network, they really value speaking to business owners because it can feel very lonely at times.
Yeah.
And I think we hear the same from self-employed PTs and people who maybe run like little studios, and they need that community as well. So we try to provide that.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat from CIMPSA about there's 80+% of organisations in the sector are sole trader, micro or SME.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Which is a massive, like you said, a lot of people, business owners working on their own at times.
Yeah.
Or like you said,
absolutely.
self-employed. So in terms of leadership and inspiring people, you must have worked with a lot of inspiring people through your journey. Who's the most inspirational leader you've worked with?
I couldn't narrow it down to one. I really tried, but I felt awful about the people when I took their names. So I mentioned a guy called Ted earlier, who he was a coach with the county FA and ran this business very much when doing holiday camps and starting to get into schools was very new, probably like Paul and James were in terms of being very early to that. And there was Ted. There was also a guy called Matt Jones at the county FA who worked there when I did my work experience. And the thing with them was that it was not about Rafe the coach, Rafe the work experience, like person to just use to get tasks and no one else wants to do. It was Rafe the person, and I always felt very much like they were really investing in me when I got to work with them. So I did that week of work experience, and there's Matt trying to get me out to all these events, asking me how I'm finding them, what I'm learning from them, and then I go back in and someone's like, we need you to do the inventory on the stock cupboard, which like the work experience person does every year, and there was just such a contrast. And then more recently, again, in terms of people that really they're about the person, not necessarily the role or the reason they're working with them. There's a woman called Selena who I do a lot of my FA learning and development with, who is just incredible for how far beyond what anyone would expect she is prepared to go to support people in terms of kind of giving her time and advice. And similar to that, Stephen Mitchell, I know was a guest early doors. I always think with Mitch, like he's just taught me, if you can do something nice for someone, just do it. There doesn't need to be a reason. You don't need to be thinking about the payoff. But it seems to have, you can't have a conversation without Mitch's name coming up in sport and physical activity, and that's because he's doing that. He's made that effort for so many people. So yeah, those people have been. I've always felt very, very lucky to have worked with them.
Yeah. And are there any traits from those 4 people you've named there that you are either trying to do yourself, or you think you have kind of come a long way in terms of developing those traits personally?
Definitely trying. They're always trying. Something working with Selena that I'm really, really trying is just how like non-judgmental, open-minded she is in terms of she doesn't make assumptions. If you have a difficult, something happens, you get a setback, something goes wrong, it's so easy to start to think about blame, or to start to like play the victim and think there's nothing you can do about it. And she's just so much more, like we talk a lot about like growth or fixed mindset, and she's just so growth mindset. And I catch myself when I'm being fixed. I'm just trying to kind of catch myself that little bit earlier each time. But yeah, the biggest thing across all of them that I'm really trying to do, and I think is probably like a never-ending journey, is working with people from a perspective of they're another human, build a relationship with them, the work, everything else will come.
That's brilliant, really good. You reminded me then when you were talking about Selena about Ted Lasso. I don't know if you've seen it on Apple TV. So
no.
He's an American coach, comes over and coaches a football team.
Yeah.
And one of his quotes is, "Be curious, not judgmental." And I think that's just so simple but so true, isn't it? And like you mentioned there, Selena does it. I'm sure a lot of great leaders, they don't judge stuff when they see stuff or hear stuff that could be perceived negative. They're like, actually, let's delve a bit deeper. Like, why has it happened? Can I help? Can I support? And it's just like a really positive switch, I guess, that people can do.
We were talking a bit earlier about getting your exercise and the energy it gives you, not seeing the negatives in things.
Yeah.
You just feel so much like lighter. It definitely does make a difference, but it's an ongoing thing, I guess.
So you work with many employers across the sector, and also colleagues at CIMSPA and the FA work you do as well. If we asked one of your colleagues or people you work with from the sector about your leadership style, what do you think they would say?
Yeah, it was interesting timing, actually, kind of end of year review time at work with CIMPSA. So I've asked the team that I work in for some feedback from them around how I work with them. Specifically with CIMPSA, we're very much focused on, we have a real clear behaviour framework for what it looks like to be, a kind of leader within CIMPSA, clear behaviours, clear values. So ask them to kind of tell me a bit about where they do or don't see me living and breathing those in my work. And a few things they talked about was having really high standards for myself and kind of always trying to get better, always trying to improve. And therefore within the team being prepared to, take the lead on having a difficult conversation sometimes, and maybe whether that's, challenging a partner on something that they see that we could be doing better, or internally within the team where we're trying to learn from something and get better, and that is really important to me. So it's really nice that comes through to them as well. Another thing was about around being quite reliable. So I'm really lucky to work in a team of really great people. But when we need to work online together or we're in person together working, that there is always that investment of time first in how are you, how are you getting on, what's going on with you, and understanding that, and then being there for that person off the back of that, knowing that, we've got a colleague who is getting married in 2 weeks, so like stress levels are just crazy, like be there, support that. Someone's like, someone moves house, someone has something else going on in their life, just kind of knowing that, and then knowing, you need to try and show up for that person a little bit differently at that time. So that's been quite important. And then, although obviously, I'm just talking away now, like usually I try to really listen first when I'm working with people, is take that step back, listen first, probably listen more than I speak, be quite intentional with what I say. Those are the things that, some of them I think are a little bit more natural to me and the things I've always wanted to put across. Others more, had to really work on because of seeing that I don't do them very well, and probably then the amount of time you invest in trying to improve on them turns them into a bit more of a strength.
What are those things then? What are the things that you have to consciously kind of push yourself on, or hold yourself accountable for?
Yeah, I think around, in terms of really being there for people and really kind of showing up when people need it, because I have a preference probably for more being quite task focused and really getting things done. And it's been really from learning when I can't be that because I've got things going on I can't avoid, has made me really realise, well, that's always happening with someone. That's always going on in people's lives. So yeah, that's one that didn't come naturally, but I think now from having really invested in making it a real conscious effort and just seeing how far it goes has helped it become a bit more natural, a bit more ingrained now. But it hasn't always been the case. There's so much been a case of why can't we just get this done? But then when I need the support, I like it when people reach out. So try and do the same thing back.
That's really good. It's really transparent and open to ask for that. Is it like a 360 feedback approach, isn't it? By asking people, your colleagues at different levels, to feedback on you and your styles.
Yeah, kind of. We could definitely do more, within our team, within CIMSPA. But there is definitely a very open culture of either giving feedback where you've seen it, maybe without someone asking, but it's going to be kind of that openness to receiving it, and also if you if you ask people for it and kind of put it in people's mind that you're trying to focus on becoming more aware of something or doing something differently, people will really look for that and try and give some quality feedback against it.
Yeah. And if someone either kind of progresses within CIMSPA or comes into a role from external organisations, how do you go about developing leaders to fit in with your culture? Because you've got quite a unique culture at CIMSPA. So what's that process from, like I said, either progressed or coming into a role? How do you start developing leaders?
Yeah. I mean, I think I can talk about it a little bit from both in terms of I've only been there just over 18 months. So I very much remember coming in and there was just such an emphasis from the start on, we really want you to be yourself. You know, I started in, like 4 of us started doing the same type of role at the same time. And there was a real focus on be yourselves. You know, that might mean needing 4 different types of support, you know, being good at 4 different things, needing to learn in 4 different areas, but being yourself is the way to get the best out of someone and is a way to really see who they are as a leader, give them the best chance to really flourish as a leader. I think that is the culture bit, is really encouraging people to be who they are. That kind of phrase of like bring their whole selves to work. So it's not you open your laptop or you walk through the door and you put a mask on and that comes off at 5 o'clock. You know, it's very much like the whole person is very much around kind of when people come in. And then I suppose in terms of progressing, developing within the organisation, we've just recruited quite a lot of different jobs at all different levels. I went for what would have been a promotion for me and didn't get it, but off the back of that, have had some really quality feedback, some very clear, here is where the development areas are, and things put in place for where I can get some support with them. So some time invested in me working with a coach, a formal qualification in sort of to support a different area, and then shadowing senior people in the business who are doing something to kind of develop in other areas. So yeah, there is probably a need for all of them in a certain time and a certain place for the right person. But it's the fact that, it's not the case of seeing just put everyone, like you put someone on a course and that automatically means they're going to be a better leader or they're going to develop. There's a lot of attention given to different ways of learning.
And I guess going back to that whole person or be yourself approach, and the traits of the good leaders you've worked with, they're for the person, they're all about the person. Yeah. So CIMPSA are all about, it doesn't matter who you are, where you want to be, we'll help you get there and we'll support you in that process. Like you said, whether it's shadowing, CPD, certain qualifications, they're there to help you progress as a person, not just a staff member as such.
And also, like, I think it's really easy for people to think that leadership is about senior positions, it's about progressing, it's about people who, you know, they want their career to go up and up and up. Or it could be people doing the bit they want to be doing really well and enjoying it and get something from it. And that, you know, that includes a workplace where you've got somebody who, you know, their career is not their priority, their home life and their family is, they need work to be really stable, and that's where they want to be long term. And then there are other people who, you know, may really want to progress within one place, or, you know, progress to a point that is outside of that company, but kind of recognizing that there are elements of leadership in each of those people doing it each of those ways, I suppose, is what then makes you feel a little bit more invested in and like kind of like they've kind of got you as a person's best interests at heart, and then you give more as well.
Yeah, it's a bit like teaching. So every teacher doesn't necessarily want to progress into leadership where they come out of the classroom, because if you're, say, born to be a teacher, or you've got a passion for teaching, it doesn't, like, you're not being lazy by not wanting to progress out of the classroom if that's your speciality, if that's what you love, or if that's what gives you the work-life balance, like you said. There's nothing wrong with staying in the same role but still progressing as like an educator, for example.
And that's a little bit like we're trying to do. So CIMPSA are a chartered institute. It means that we give members chartered status, and that's similar lines in terms of you know, you've got lots of very much frontline operational jobs. You know, you've got sports coaches, but if a sports coach's only way to progress from a salary perspective, a recognition, career development, is to move into being a team leader, a manager, they get further and further away from coaching. You know, that might not be the right thing for them. But if they could be recognised as a chartered coach, and that therefore then held that value to them, it held value to employers or to customers for them, then it gives people the chance to really pursue a career path that is right for them, rather than thinking, I either need to become a manager in this sector, or, like we see all the time, I need to leave the sector and go and get a serious, quotation marks, like proper job. Yeah.
It's a dream getting the sector to that place that's recognised as a career, absolutely.
Yeah.
So back to you as a leader, what's been your biggest challenge? Not necessarily of your current role, but throughout your career, your biggest challenge that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, I was struggling at first in terms of, I think there's been some really positive ones in terms of, spoke a little bit about kind of having been involved in FA youth leadership programs. They run a program called the Youth Council that's very much like a group of young people. They deliver projects. They get to be involved within FA governance, which is brilliant. But it's a voluntary role, but there's really high standards, really high expectations on your commitment, which there absolutely should be. And I suppose the challenge bit when I was thinking about this was when I did 3 years in the group. I'd come towards the end of my second year, reapplied for my third year to be like the vice chair of the group, right when the chair was then going to become more of a strategic role doing the FA governance work. The vice chairs were going to really lead the team and make sure all the delivery happened. And I was in the interview like buzzing for it, and the first question was, what have you learned? What have you learned, or what are your reflections from last year, where I'd been like a team leader? And I was just like, I just stopped and thought, and I was just like, at the time, I thought I was giving everything I could. Like, the time I was giving, energy I was giving was brilliant. And I was sitting there now thinking, like, I can't go back and give more, but I know I could have. Like, I know I could have. And I actually, like, I got a bit emotional, but I was, the people that were interviewing were really supportive and great. And, I think it showed them how much I cared. But yeah, it was that kind of challenge of like, if you really, really love doing something, you kind of give your all to it. Like, where are the appropriate limits and boundaries for it? Really important that your standards and expectations aren't put on other people. And that was a challenge I really had within that world, was you had a group of like 10, 15 young people, some at university, some in work, maybe some neither. All had completely different like expectations for the level of commitment that they could give, and trying to manage a team of people with that in very much what was like a peer-to-peer environment was like, yeah, it was really, really difficult. Really great, like learning from it, I suppose, in terms of actually just being more open. Like, if you know that there are people who are at different levels and different places on that, you need to make sure that the conversation is open about that, and that people feel like it's a safe space to say, I don't agree with you, I don't feel the same way, I'm not going to approach that the same way you are. And we did some of that, but could have done so much more. So yeah, that was quite a big challenge at the time, and quite a lot of learning from that.
I think it's a good trait as a leader. You kind of know a strong leader if people are comfortable, I think, to talk to them openly like that. I think boss and leader, obviously, those two words get compared quite a lot, but a leader, you think you can go to, and you, like you said, you can be transparent, you can be open, you can be honest, you can share sometimes difficult things. So moving from the biggest challenge to your proudest achievement, what would that be?
I think it's sort of linked to that group and that work as well. So when I got to go to, they run an event each year called FA Leadership Academy, a residential event. Young people from around the country come, and get a real introduction to kind of some real core principles of leadership. And I went as a participant to the first event in 2016, and then I got on the group, the youth council. Then they run that event and some other projects through the year. So I then got to be part of running it for 3 years, and each year we took it to another level. And each year since then, the group has taken it to another level, and I've got to stay involved as like leading workshops, a bit more support, kind of in the background. But yeah, it just gets taken to another level each time. My last year was the first year where we had international delegates there. So we had young people from maybe like 4 or 5 countries. And when you talked about most inspiring leaders, I didn't get to spend very much time with them, but there were 2 young women at the event who were from Jordan. I think they were from Jordan, and they basically had to get smuggled out of the country to come to the event because of the country's views around women being involved in sport. And like, you know, I just thought I can't relate. Like I can't understand that barrier. I can't understand the kind of mindset that they must be in, like at times. But being able to provide an event there that they felt so, you know, they felt so safe, they enjoyed so much with people they'd never met before, that they would never meet again, but they were prepared to kind of really commit to and get involved in the event, told us that we did, you know, we'd really put something quite special together.
That kind of impact you've had then internationally is quite impressive, isn't it, through that group? That's amazing.
They carry on doing it. You know, that event is, sometimes it's about bringing different people into it. Sometimes it's about, they've done more and more around kind of that event being such a safe space for the young people that come to it, and people are prepared to then open up about themselves, challenges they have trying to be involved in football, or maybe wider than that, kind of in their personal lives, because of the support they see available to them from the people around them. And you know, like, we're all trying to work on that non-judgmental environment where they can just come and kind of really be themselves, even if they don't necessarily see someone quite like them around them. They know it's still a safe space to be like that.
Yeah. You mentioned Matt Jones, didn't you, from the FA? Yeah. So he's coming to a future conference of ours to run diversity and inclusion type workshop, because I think our sector, there's a lot we can do to, like you said, create that, if it's a safe space, or to diversify our workforce, etc. So much we can do on that, and such a big topic that we all need to get on board with. Back to CIMSPA. So what are the plans for the next 1, 2, 3 years? Where is CIMSPA going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure everywhere we're going, because I think we're branching out in quite a few different directions. But the work I'm going to be involved in specifically, we're going from being a partnerships team to a local delivery team, and that basically means, rather than 4 or 5 of us covering the UK and being very light touch with employers, not necessarily being based very close to them and therefore understanding the area they work in and the challenges that means for them, to having a much more local presence. That's why our team's grown, and we're really trying to, I suppose, bring to life the best of that kind of levelling up idea within sport and physical activity. So in a local area, create what's called a local skills hub that obviously all of the Aspire network will be a really big part of, which will be understanding what the employers in a county or like a local enterprise partnership area need in the way of current ongoing training for their staff, existing staff, but also their kind of future needs in terms of their turnover of staff, the growth they've got planned, and the staff they need to resource that. And then making sure that locally for them, the right training is happening to provide the right people for that. Because we've done quite a lot of work to identify just how much money gets to a point wasted on irrelevant training at the right or the wrong levels for the wrong people for the wrong jobs in the sector at the moment. So trying to make that a lot more efficient, and hopefully that will in turn give sport and physical activity and exercise a lot more credibility and a lot more respect within a local area, on from a council perspective, from a chamber of commerce and an enterprise perspective, from a public health perspective, because they'll see that actually the supply of workforce does meet the demand of the type and the nature of the physical activity that needs to be provided locally, not just to get people more active, to get people more healthy, to make people, to help people live longer, to help people, be able to contribute economically more. So yeah, that's the kind of the growth plans on the side that I'm most involved in. But then we're also going to be taking the scope that we can regulate the sector a lot further, to hopefully give those that like the businesses that are part of the Aspire network, who are, they're already doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because they're being made to, but actually make that good practice really mandatory and really like the bare minimum, to hopefully raise standards across the board then in terms of sport and physical activity delivery.
And there's a lot of organisations in the network who will be involved in those local skills hubs. If people are listening who aren't part of the network, where do they go to kind of connect with those people in their area?
Yeah, so the people that are going to be working really locally, the new people coming in, they don't actually start until they start in a couple of weeks, and then there's a few weeks induction. So you're probably looking at May before they're starting to reach out to people. Yeah. But before then, people get in touch with CIMPSA on social media, get in touch through partners at CIMPSPA.co.uk, and you can, we will then pick it up, and the kind of closest person to you will reach out, find out a little bit more about your business, about your workforce, what you want to offer your people and how you want to develop them, and just get that conversation started. And then when the local skills hub work starts to build, and there's that opportunity to feed into the kind of plan that gets created for your local area, you'll be hopefully more, at the front of the line to be involved in that.
Excellent. That's a project we can't wait to kick off in our region. And to kind of finish off, Rafe, we like to ask our guests what books or podcasts or people they'd recommend to develop their leadership skills. I know you're a bit of a bookworm, if I may say so, because I've borrowed a few books off you. So what would you recommend our listeners get their heads or ears onto?
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm probably more of a learn by doing, but I love reading. Yeah, I really love reading. I'd say I love everything that Simon Sinek's done. Start with Why Leaders Eat Last, Infinite Game stuff, his podcast. I don't always listen to his podcast, but I know it's there for people that prefer to take it in that way. I'm rereading Chimp Paradox, Steve Peters at the moment, and having really got into that, I've seen that he's got other books, he's got other training and content out there that it looks like, looks great. I've now got a chimp in my little chimp. I've named him. I'm starting to put him out in the world, and trying to manage him a little bit better. And then if people aren't, don't necessarily want to sit down and read a long book, one that probably takes an hour is Who Moved My Cheese. I think is really, really great. It's all about change. In some of the learning development stuff I do, we use it as a bit of a framework for some of the content that we deliver, and it's a story rather than a kind of theory based book, so something a little bit different.
And who's the author of that?
It is Spencer Johnson, I think is the name, and I think he's written a bit of a follow-up that's again this story, and it's along the same theme. And then I think he's also been involved in like a series of, they're called the 10-minute manager, the 10-minute father, and again short books.
And final question, the $1 million question really, is what one thing do organisations in our sector need to do to crack the active code and get more children more active more often?
I tried to make it as non-jargony as I could, because I thought the sector's guilty of that, and I can definitely be as well. and I wrote down that stop expecting people to be active just because we enjoy it. And I think it's taken for granted the positive perception we think people have of it from the outside, and what people get from it at first when they're doing it. Because the way I sort of looked at it was like, I've got friends who love spending their weekend on having like a night out and social. I don't enjoy that. I don't do it because they tell me how great it is.
Yeah.
So if I tell them how great going to the gym at 6 a.m. is, why do I expect to get a different response?
No, it's been really, really good. Thank you, Rafe. From hearing your career journey right at the start, your leadership inspirations, some of the traits that you've managed to develop over time, the amazing work with the FA Youth Council, and obviously the brilliant work CIMSPA are doing for the sector. So yeah, thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure to hear your honest and transparent view on things.
Thanks very much, Luke.
Join us next time for the Active Code podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with us on Twitter @aspire_partners and find out more about us and the network at www.aspireactivepartnerships.co.uk.